Hey, David, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
It's so great to be here. I really appreciate it. And, we've been running in the same circles for way more than a decade, haven't we?
Yeah,
It's great. I started on a bond trading desk. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
And in New York City, and I was an awful bond trader, and I hated it. But I really liked the information behind the bond traders, Dow Jones and Reuters and things like that, and ended up working in that world as a B2B marketer and B2B salesperson for almost 15 years. And then I recognized it very, very early on that the metaphor for marketing and sales on the web was not an advertising metaphor, which was everyone was talking about in the 1990s and very, very early 2000s, was that it's about advertising. I decided it wasn't. It was all about content and all about reaching people with awesome information on the web. And so in 2002, I was trying to convince the company I was working for at the time, Thomson Reuters, that this is the way to go. And they said I was too radical, so they fired my ass. And that's when I started on my own thing and started writing and speaking and whatnot about how marketing and sales is about attracting people on this newfangled web machine through content, and then driving them into a process where the selling and the one-on-one happens. And turns out I was kind of right on that.
Yeah. So is today your focus speaking and writing, or is it consulting too? Or
I do four things. I speak all over the world. I've spoken in 46 countries, all 7 continents, and as we're recording this in 5 days, I'm going to Cartagena, Colombia for a speaking gig. So my world is going to really awesome places. I've done 11 books. And I've actually, unlike a lot of people, actually sell a lot of books. So books are a good
yeah,
revenue
that's
source
unusual
for
for an
me.
author. Yeah.
Well, it's hard.
In the
It's hard
business
because
space. Yeah.
there's so many books out there. There's a lot of good books out there. And people don't read as much physical books. I mean, even Kindle or audiobooks that they used to. So it's tough. I also serve on advisory boards. I don't do any traditional consulting, trade my time for cash, but I do advisory work for equity. So I think of myself as a VC firm, little tiny VC firm, but rather than trade cash for equity, I'm trading time for equity. And I've had about a dozen companies that I've dug into that way. I've had some nice successes. I was the original advisor to HubSpot back in 2007, and I know know HubSpot well.
Yeah.
And have been on their advisory board since then. So that's 12 years. And when I joined them, they had beta software. They had no customers. They had 8 employees, and have ridden that wave all the way to where they've got something like 3,000 employees, a bunch of different offices, traded on the New York Stock Exchange, 65,000 customers. And I was on the Eloqua board of advisors before they were sold to Oracle. And I'm on some great companies' advisory boards now. So I really enjoy that work. Keeps me honest. I can't, not just sort of some airy-fairy academic up in the white clouds somewhere, but I'm actually able to still make things happen for organizations.
So you were pretty influential in this kind of move to content. Do you think that we've done it too far?
It's still incredibly viable. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. It's still, people still go to the search engines to figure out what kind of product and service they can buy in all kinds of markets, whether it's B2B or B2C, or where are you going to send your kid to school, or where do you want to go on vacation, or where do you want to invest money in terms of a nonprofit that you'd like to support. So people are still doing that. People are still engaging in social networks. Twitter is still vitally important, as is LinkedIn and some other of the social networks. But I believe really strongly, and this is coming from the guy that wrote the very first book about this concept, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, that came out way back in 2007. I believe that we've almost become too good at this thing, and that people are just being way too superficial. And they're sending yet another tweet, yet another LinkedIn connection, they're doing yet another YouTube video. And with the rise of AI and how people are implementing that, we as consumers don't know that if the person we're connecting with is a robot or not. At the same time, the online world of politics is fabulously polarized, and as has become the world of B2B marketing and sales, where people are just doubled down and it's all about getting that lead, and all the war metaphors of getting the competition, all that. So I think that the pendulum has swung too far into the direction of superficial online communications at a time when people are hungry for a true human connection. And I think what's coming next, and I think so many people I've spoken with are seeing this. They may not articulate it in the same way, but what's coming next is a much more human approach to all business, but especially in this B2B world, where, yeah, online's still important. Yes, content's still important. LinkedIn, yes, still important. But ultimately, those human connections, those actual physical connections, are going to be essential for success going forward, I believe, in this crazy world of digital chaos.
And that's it. I think this year there was kind of an epiphany that the companies that are having the most success, especially when they're going after a niche market in a new space
Mm-hmm.
where the brand is unrecognized,
Right.
is that they're doing face-to-face local meetups.
Right. Right.
But the content's still part of that, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The
Yeah.
base.
Exactly. It's not either or.
Yeah.
But I think that there were a lot of us, and I'll raise my hand here, guilty as charged. There were a lot of us who believed that the world was going, I don't know if I would say 100% online, but the vast majority online. And I don't think that's true anymore. So I'll call BS on myself on that one. And I believe now that a combination is essential.
Yeah.
If you had asked me this 5 years ago, I would have said you're freaking nuts that I would be saying something like that now. But I really do believe that.
Well, that's it. Especially, I'm sure you were at Inbound. It's like
Oh yeah,
the conferences are still very well attended.
and I've spoken at Inbound every single year, and it keeps getting bigger.
Yeah.
And you know why? It's because there's 25,000 people, and we're all like-minded.
Yeah.
We're learning from each other, and the sessions are great, but it's those chance encounters in the hallway, or at the food truck, or sitting next to somebody waiting for a session to start, or in the hotel lobbies, and that's where you meet someone maybe for the first time, or you renew acquaintance with somebody that you've met in the past, and that's incredibly powerful stuff. And
Yeah.
and that's what's interesting to me right now. That's something that I've actually researched that now for 5 years, dug in deep on this one to kind of figure out what it is that people can do in order to tap, I call it a fanocracy. So
Yeah.
create fans for a business. And it turns out there's a prescription for how to do that. And I think that there's organizations like HubSpot that have done it well, because that event costs them a fortune, and
Right.
they sell tickets and all that, but man, they spend a lot of money on that event. And it's not only just money, but there's 1,000 HubSpotters who devote a lot of time to pull that thing off. So it's a humongous investment, but boy, is it pay off.
Yeah, and I think in marketing, I think especially in marketing, we think in personas,
Yes,
but it's a person,
it is.
right?
I know. Well, and especially in B2B, we think, oh, we're selling to a business. No, we're
We're
not.
not.
We're selling to people, and people are human, right? And it's like, those people have so many things going on in their life, and they have passions, they have interests, they have families, and the more you can weave in those things, which is entirely possible,
Yeah.
the more you can be successful in going into 2020 and this new decade, because that's what we're searching for. We're searching for how we can do business, but at the same time, be an organization and be a person who is making genuine connections.
And I think that part has been missing. And I think we overlooked it. And we have these personas, and we're trying to do webinars. We're trying to do quick phone calls, hire the least expensive people to sell the product, and least experienced
Mm-hmm.
too. And all of a sudden we're finding out that effectiveness is a whole lot more important than efficiency.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And another thing that strikes me is the whole datafication. I don't know if that's a real word or if I just made it up, but the whole approach of marketing and sales being numbers driven, I think on one hand is valuable. It's really great to understand how many prospects do you have, and how many people did you touch on your last campaign, and how many people are in the pipeline, and all, that's all good. But when you do that so much that you kind of forget that behind each one of those numbers is a real breathing person, I think it becomes too much.
And it distracts you from the reality, which is what you want is revenue that compounds.
Yes.
Yeah, to get that
Yes.
flywheel moving.
Yes. Yes.
As
Exactly right.
a friend of
Exactly right.
ours would say.
As our mutual friend, Mr. Halligan, would say. Yeah, exactly right.
Because I think we had this shift where we wanted leads or contacts that enter their information because we didn't know anybody. But today
Right.
we know everybody.
Right. 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 Yeah. So I spent the last 5 years researching what I call a fanocracy, which is the title of my new book, subtitled "Turning Fans into Customers and Customers into Fans." And this idea came about because, as we were talking about just a moment ago, I started 5 years ago to recognize that the online thing, while great, it's missing something. And I was just digging around to what is it missing. And I was thinking about my personal life. And I was thinking about the things that I'm incredibly passionate about. So, for example, live music. I've seen 790 live music shows in my life, 75 of them being Grateful Dead concerts. And what I realized is, yeah, I love the music, but what I really love is doing that with my friends,
Yeah.
being together with like-minded people. And I started to talk to my daughter, Reiko. She was 21 at the time, 5 years ago. She's 26 now, about this. And she said, I know, Daddy, I'm thinking of the same thing. I'm so into Harry Potter. I've read all the books multiple times. I've seen the movies. And she wrote a 90,000 word alternative ending to the Harry Potter series, where Draco Malfoy is a spy for the Order of the Phoenix, and put that up on a fan fiction site that was viewed by thousands of people, read by thousands of people, commented on by hundreds of people. And she said, Daddy, I dig in deep to Harry Potter. I dig in deep to Comic-Con. I get dressed up every year with my friends. So we actually ended up researching and writing this book together. So it's me being the sales and marketing dude who loves the Grateful Dead, and my daughter, who is clearly a different generation. Since she's my daughter, she's clearly a different gender. She's mixed race, and she has way different fandoms than me. And she did a neuroscience degree at Columbia and is now in the final year of medical school. So she comes at it from a neuroscience background. So we researched why people become fans, both from a neuroscience perspective as well as good old-fashioned asking what's going on and learning the reasons. And then we created a prescription for how any kind of organization, including B2B companies, can develop fans. And it's really all about what we've been talking about. It's a human connection.
And I think people overlook that neuroscience component of it. And that's been a fascination of mine for at least the last year.
Oh, has it? Yeah, me too. I really dug into it, and we interviewed a bunch of neuroscientists. I'll give you sort of one thing that we found that I just find so utterly fascinating, and that is the power of proximity. So this concept was originally devised by a guy called Edward T. Hall about 60 years ago, and we sort of refined it. But the idea is that we humans have hardwired into us, it's non-negotiable, it is in our DNA, that we trust people um, who we know, and we're wary of people that we don't know. And the closer you get to someone, the more powerful those human emotions are.
Yeah.
And it turns out that there's concentric circles of proximity that are defined, and they cross cultures. It's true that the numbers might vary slightly, but these concentric rings are true of all cultures. The first is so-called public space, 20 feet or further away. And we humans are aware of people who are 20 feet away who we can see or hear, but we don't pay much attention to them. When they get closer than 20 feet to about 4 feet, that's called social space. That's like when you walk into a room and you immediately, unconsciously, many times, scan the room. Do I know anyone here? Is there any danger here? When someone gets within 4 feet up to about 1.5 feet, that's called personal space. That's cocktail party distance. And then intimate space is 1.5 feet or closer. That's reserved for very close friends and family members. So it turns out that when you trust someone, if you can get them into your personal space or social space, that human connection becomes incredibly strong.
Yeah.
But if you don't trust someone, you feel wary. That's why you feel wary in an elevator, because you don't know those people. It's a hardwired thing in our brain.
Or airplane. Yeah.
Or an airplane, or subway or whatever. But once you know someone, that connection is really powerful. So that's why something like an event, for example, HubSpot Inbound, but any event which B2B companies can put on, those events are incredibly powerful because you're in close proximity with like-minded people. And as humans, we naturally assume that those people are friendly because we're in the same, essentially, tribe as them as part of this conference. So it's really, really powerful from a neuroscience perspective to figure out ways in this world of digital sales and marketing to have actual physical connections with people, whether that's doing a tour or doing meetups or inviting people to your offices or good old-fashioned lunches with people.
God forbid.
Maybe we'll bring back the 3 martini lunch, right? But those things are powerful. And it comes down to neuroscience. I'll take this one step further, and that is, people will say to me, yeah, but David, we run a global business, or we have a business where our customers are scattered all over the country. We can't possibly have physical connections with all of them. We don't run that kind of business. And in the consumer space, people will say, well, gee, I sell whatever it is, batteries. How can I possibly do that? Well, it turns out that something called mirror neurons, which is another neuroscience thing we dug into, helps with that. So mirror neurons are this interesting part of your brain that fires when you see somebody else doing something. And it fires in your brain as if you were doing it yourself. So if I take a bite of a lemon, oh my gosh, I can taste really tartness. My eyes scrunch up. My mouth begins to water instantly. My face puckers a little bit, and it's hard to talk because it's so powerful, that lemon. You may have felt that too, just by me describing it. You may have had a little bit of saliva secreted because I was just talking about it. That's mirror neurons at work. So what that means is that if you film videos or take photographs and use those on social networks or put up YouTube videos or whatever it might be, or do webinars where you are framed in such a way on the camera so that you are in the personal space of the people on the other side of the screen. People naturally, through mirror neurons, believe that you are actually physically near them. That's one reason why we feel we know movie stars even though we've never met them, or we might cry at a movie when something's sad because we feel empathy for the person on the other side of the screen. And that means that as B2B marketers and salespeople, the more we can use video but cropped in a certain way, or the more we can use images cropped in a certain way, the closer we can get to our customers. I know I've been riffing for a long time, but I just love the neuroscience aspect
Well,
about how
that's
we
it.
can do these things.
I think people stay way too high on the logic and the analysis and the ROI, and that's part of it. But it's people.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's real simple, right?
Right. And when you get that know, like, and trust through either an influencer or a face of the brand or a
Mm-hmm.
face of the company or a celebrity, and it's clear why that works.
It does. And that's why you can have people who work for companies who, in the hierarchy of the company, they're fairly low. They might be a junior marketing person, but they're so good at relating to customers through video that they all
Yeah.
of a sudden, why in the world does Emily in marketing have 10,000 Twitter followers? Well, it's because they are the human voice of the brand,
Yeah.
and that person. And so my daughter Reiko and I spent 5 years researching. We spent 2 years writing, and Tony Robbins wrote the forward to the book. It's some really nice endorsements from people like Seth Godin. And we kick off the book. The very first story is how I met Brian Halligan,
Yeah.
who's the CEO of HubSpot, as you well know. And the way we met is that he invited me to his office to have a chat. And a couple of his colleagues were there, and I walked in. I'd never met the man. This was 2007. Never met the man. And in the first minute that I walked in, I pulled out my MacBook Pro. I opened up my computer. And there are stickers on the back of my computer. And he goes, wait, we can't start this meeting until you tell me about the stickers on the back of your computer. So I had a Nantucket sticker, and I said, I've got a house in Nantucket. I love it. I'd go there all the time. And he goes, I go there every summer too. And what about the Japan sticker, Brian says? And I lived in Japan for 7 years. My wife Yukari is Japanese. I love Japan, very important to my life. He goes, I lived in Japan too. What about that Grateful Dead sticker on your computer? And I said, well, I love the Grateful Dead. They're my favorite band. I've been to like 50 concerts. Brian says I've seen the Grateful Dead 100 times. And he said to me, now we're into the second minute that we've known one another, right? He says to me, it's like we're long lost brothers. We both saw the future of marketing really early. We both are into the Grateful Dead in Nantucket in Japan. This is crazy. And since then, we've become really close friends. I've probably gone to 100 live concerts with him, including probably 30 other Grateful Dead concerts since then. We've been to Nantucket together a couple of times, and I was invited to give a speech when HubSpot opened its office in Japan. So this idea of how we share our passions outside of work with people in a work environment are really, really, really powerful for B2B sales and marketing. And Brian, within a week, invited me to be the founding member of the HubSpot Advisory Board, which I'm still on. And all of us have stories like this, where we met somebody around a passion we share.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is that so many people are afraid to share their private passions in the B2B world. You look on people's LinkedIn profiles, it's as if they only do work. You don't find anything of a personal nature. But when you open yourself up with things of a personal nature, you can have, like in my case with Brian, probably the most important business relationship that I've ever forged, simply because of a couple of stickers on my computer showed that we were part of the same tribes.
And I think that's it, because that's what I describe to salespeople is until you're in the tribe, you're outside the tribe.
Right.
Well,
Right.
he invited you in because of your inbound marketing expertise.
Right.
But he connected with you because of Japan, Nantucket, and the dead.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And it happened in minutes.
That's exactly right. And the old school, let's go play golf together, is kind of like that, but there's only so many people who play golf. And so I'm arguing, and this is a really important part of this book, Fanocracy, that we wrote. I'm arguing that the more you show the things you're passionate about, even if they're obscure or strange, or outside the mainstream, the more people are likely to bond with you, because they also showcase their passion. And even if you don't share the same passion, like, I'm really into music, but I can totally relate to someone who's really into gardening or birds or something else, because I understand passion.
Yeah. Now, tell us about the book. What would people get out of it after they read it?
So it's a lot of what we've been talking about. We looked at all of the different ways that all kinds of organizations, and certainly including B2B companies, can develop fans and do business in a more human way. And not that online is going away, but put it in combination with online, it becomes incredibly powerful. And there's 10 prescriptions. One of them is proximity, which I just shared. Another one is passion, which I just shared. But 10 prescriptions, all simple and easy to implement, for how you can develop fans. And the ultimate manifestation of developing fans, in my mind, is, are people willing to share a manifestation of that by virtue of, for example, wearing a logo t-shirt of your company, putting a ball cap on with a logo of your company, or putting a sticker on your computer with the logo of your company. And we all know, because we've all seen it, that people will do that of a B2B company. People walk around all the time with a logo t-shirt or a sticker on their computer, depicting a business-to-business or company that focuses on, enterprise software or something. So this is true of every organization. I had an opportunity to spend a half day with Jim Bridenstine. He's the director of NASA. He runs all of NASA. And I'm like, dude, you have an amazing number of fans, and you're a government agency. They're a government agency with 40,000 followers on Twitter, and you cannot walk down a street in any city in the world without, over the course of about an hour, seeing a NASA t-shirt. And they're a government agency with fans. So anybody can develop fans.
Cool. And where do people go to follow you?
So I'm on most of the social networks. I'm DM Scott, DMSCOTT. There's a site, fanocracy.com, where I've got a bunch of free stuff. Of course, now we're talking the online marketing thing, right? There's a lot of free stuff about Fanocracy on fanocracy.com. And what else? I use my middle name because I'm the only David Meerman Scott in the entire planet.
And you're not a serial killer.
And I'm not. So if you type in David Meerman Scott into any of the machines, the Google machine or the LinkedIn machine, I will pop up.